Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
Down goes Sam Clovis. Sam Clovis is gone. Now, you guys might remember me talking about this guy a while back because he was nominated to be the USDA's chief scientist. Now, he didn't get that. There's a lot of outrage, and there's some good reasons why. For example, he absolutely had no qualifications being the USDA's top scientist. Instead, his experience was basically serving as a co-chairman and policy advisor for the Trump campaign. So that's not really experience relevant to the USDA. But, of course, this is the Trump administration. So, you work on my campaign, you get good top spot because I like you. Okay. Now, the reason, as I said before, that he ended up not getting the nomination, he actually withdrew his nomination, is because he's inexperienced, but also he said some very controversial things. In fact, on his show, he would regularly claim that it was black people, specifically the President of the United States and Eric Holder. Those guys, those are the real racists. Oh, that's interesting coming from a white dude. Now, in fact, he said, quote, could it be that the first African-American president is being given a pass because he's black? Well, who's giving Obama a pass? I don't quite understand who out there was giving President Obama a pass. I guess you could say his hardcore lib supporters. Yeah, sure. Progressives certainly were not, as a lot of progressive outlets would constantly challenge him on drone strikes and, of course, dealing with the right wing and putting Social Security, for example, on the table during budget negotiations. But no, it turns out that everybody was just giving President Obama a pass because he's black. Because he's black. And he says, quote, how incredibly racist is that? Strange. The logical conclusion is that because he is black, he cannot help himself. This kind of thinking is the absolute worst. I'm not a racist. It's those minorities. I can't believe how racist they are, guys. And by the way, President Obama, he's not born in America. Just as an aside. Yeah, he's also a birther. So, look, those beliefs are odious and reprehensible. But when it comes to policy, it's actually worse. Because he refuses the evidence that proves of the existence of climate change. He's like, evidence? I don't see any evidence. No, all that stuff, that's fake news. Doesn't actually exist. And he even has problems with the phrase climate change itself. In fact, back in 2013, he was talking to another right-wing radio host and said that progressives believe that they can create the ideal climate for everyone all over the earth. Really? Well, let me get to the quote here, because it's about as bonkers as it sounds. Quote, what we have to examine is how language changes. And when you start to go away from global warming to climate change, this goes right into the heart of progressive thinking. Because what it says, or what the implication is that somehow the progressives are going to figure out a way to create the ideal climate in all regions of the earth. And so, how nonsensical is that? If you follow that logic to its logical conclusion, which is really hilarious for him to talk about logic, that's the conclusion in which you arrive, is that there is some perfect weather or some perfect climate that we will have for everyone. Everyone will thrive. What? Look, you know what that is it's a really nice straw man that he sets up and he knocks it down. But see, that's not the reality of it. I know, it's surprising, right? There's no progressive out there that right now believes that we can figure out a way to create the ideal climate all over the earth, whatever that even is, whatever that even means, right? But hey, look, that would be interesting, but that's not what climate change means. That's not the reason that it was changed to climate change. It's because global warming was not testing well, was not polling well. And here's what progressives actually want to do, right? Or what we think we want to do, right? We want to protect the environment from the changing climate. And look, I know Republicans, conservatives climate changes all the time. Climate changes over time, over long periods of geologic time. But see, the problem is, with all the carbon that's being put in the atmosphere at this moment, and not only that, but you also have methane that gets put in the atmosphere as well, is that the world, the climate is changing more rapidly than the species on Earth, animals and plants, and even to an extent human beings, will be able to adapt to it. Okay? So, yes, the world is getting warmer. The globe is getting warmer, and a lot of that CO2, by the way, and it could be a lot worse, that CO2 is being absorbed by the oceans. Well, once the oceans sort of run out of the ability to absorb carbon, then it's all going to go into the atmosphere. That's going to exacerbate what we've already put into the atmosphere and make climate change worse and increase the temperature of the Earth even more. And when you have such rapid change, there are species that cannot adapt. And so the species that humans depend on, because we might be able to adapt with our air conditioning and things like that, but not all the things that we depend on to survive will be able to survive, and that will be disastrous for human beings. Not to mention the animals, of course, and the plants. So that's why we got to get a handle on climate change. And progressives believe that maybe if we do some steps like reduce carbon emissions and transfer over to a green energy economy that doesn't release all these doesn't burn all these fossil fuels and release all this carbon and methane into the atmosphere, then we can stem the worst of global warming, of climate change, and we can slow down the rate that the climate is changing and give these animals, plants, and etc. time to be able to adapt. And therefore save all these or most of these species from extinction. And in so doing, serve ourselves. If that makes sense. So, but nonetheless, right? That's what progressives believe. But Clovis believes no, progressives just want to make an ideal, they believe, they're so arrogant to believe that they can create an ideal climate in every spot on Earth. Again, wonderful straw man. And actually, it'd be super cool if we could figure out a way to do that. But that's not reality, right? But nonetheless, that's what Clovis believes. And thankfully, he's no longer going to be able to occupy a government position. He's going to go back to Iowa and do whatever. And that's a wonderful thing, right? So, look, at the end of the day, Clovis and people like him, it's not that they're just ignorant and hateful, which obviously from the examples that I've given you is fairly clear. But also thanks to those beliefs and what he would do based on those beliefs, policy-wise, people like that have no business running or being in charge of or even having any position of power inside a government agency. And so, thankfully, Clovis does not. Hey everybody, thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more like this, please hit the subscribe button below. And if you want to support truly independent progressive media, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/TYTNation.